just being in the middle and like being between Bryan and between Miz, and to see Miz cutting this promo and these tears happening. I'm like, oh my God, he's crying. He's going to start crying. Oh my God, this is happening. I hope that they're going to know that it's Jon Moxley and not Dean Ambrose. And to see that switch happen and to kind of see him be like reborn as his former self again was like such a cool moment.
Okay, there are a lot of things to love about Renee Paquette, not the least of which is that she's a fellow Canadian. And not only is she from Canada, not only is she from Ontario, but as I learned during our last interview, she's from the city next to the one that I grew up in. She's from Ajax, I'm from Pickering. But what I love about Renee is that she always brings it, whether it's on AEW television or on her podcast, which is just the sessions, not the oral sessions. We get into that, by the way. And of course, she brings it during this, our second conversation together. But before we dive into this, I just want to say thank you for all of the support. The main channel here just hit 340,000 subscribers. My other YouTube channel, CVV Clips, just hit 220,000 subscribers in a little over a year. So combine that together, do the math. That's a lot of people. And without you, it's just me talking to a camera in an empty room. So I appreciate you. And I appreciate Morgan & Morgan, not just for supporting this video, but for completely changing the game when it comes to submitting an injury claim. If you've ever been in a car accident, you probably thought, man, hiring a lawyer to help with my insurance claim sounds like such a pain. I mean, you gotta find the lawyer, you gotta do all the paperwork, you gotta go to all the meetings. Just what a hassle, right? Not anymore. With Morgan & Morgan, they make filing an injury claim so easy. Morgan & Morgan has modernized the injury law process so you can submit a claim and have it reviewed by a lawyer without ever having to leave your couch. You can sign documents, upload pictures, share medical records and doctor bills, all from your phone. You can even text your attorney without having to go into an office. When you're injured in an accident, hiring an attorney is one of the first things that you should do. And with Morgan & Morgan, they make filing a claim so easy. More than 3 million people have trusted Morgan & Morgan when they were injured in an accident. If you're ever injured in an accident, you can check out Morgan & Morgan. You can file a claim in 8 clicks or less, and then you'll have America's largest injury law firm fighting for you. You can get started at forthepeople.com/CVV or dial #law, that's #529 from your cell phone. Now let's dive in. Please welcome Renee Paquette.
Oh, Renee, it is so good to see you.
Good to see you.
It's been over 2 years since you were on Insight, and like so much has changed in that time.
Yeah, a lot has changed in that time. God, to think of like over 2 years ago, I would have been massively pregnant, about to drop a baby into the world. I was still living in Las Vegas. Now I'm in Ohio. I'm in Cincinnati. Yeah. My baby is here. She's alive and well. She's almost 2. God, yeah, a lot has changed. I work for AEW now.
Yeah. Last time I talked to you, you're like, I don't know. I probably won't work in wrestling anymore. We'll see.
Everyone gets that bug, though. I will say there's just nothing like pro wrestling.
That's
what everybody says. You're in. It's like the mafia, or you just like you're in.
Yeah. When we spoke last time, your show had the word oral in the title.
That's gone now. Yeah. I know.
Who got really mad about that? Who said that's gotta go?
Honestly, nobody got mad about it. No one cared. It was more so a thing for me that I was like, oh, if we want to like get other advertisers or different ads, I just didn't want people to be like weird about it.
Yeah.
People were pervy about it, obviously. So I was like, oh, well, let's just change it. And I kept just calling it the sessions anyways. I kind of short form everything. So yeah, I just kind of kept referring it to the sessions in the intros to the show and blah, blah. And as I'm talking to like Emilio, our producer, James, some of the people at the volume, they're like, do we want to just change it to the sessions? I was like, yeah, I like it. Why not? Sure.
And I get where you're coming from. It's like, it's an oral history. It's an oral dictation of these things that have happened.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Not a pervert, guys. Confirmed.
Well, you know, like,
hey, we've all got our vices, right?
A nice double meaning. Sure. How different is life now as a mom?
Oh my God, it's so different. It's different in that it's weird because I feel like even though my daughter she'll be turning 2 in June, and I've had a kid for 2 years now. but everything constantly is changing. So you go from having like a tiny little baby to figuring out, whoa, I'm a mom for the first time. What am I doing? How do I figure this out? What's happening? To then like you kind of get in a little bit of a groove. And then as soon as you figured out that game, the game has changed. And now she's walking, she's running, she's doing things, she's active. She's like, I feel like she's like a little girl now. She doesn't feel like a little baby, but juggling that with working and staying ambitious and creative and creating space for myself to do that is like, that's really what the challenge is.
I would imagine what would be difficult is like, you're still so good at focusing on the many jobs that you have. And we'll talk about all of the jobs that you have and all the hats that you wear, but it'd be so difficult to like, while we're doing this, what if your daughter does something amazing for the first time and
I know
you're not
you
there
miss
for it?
things. And it's true, like being on the road, like, you know, going back on the road with wrestling, like joining AEW and being on the road. I mean, to be gone really essentially a day and a half a week. And if we're gone longer than that, we always bring her with us. Like if it's like a pay-per-view week or something like that, of course, then we'll just bring her and stay and kind of stay put that way. And that makes life a lot easier. But yeah, I don't want to miss anything. And I'm also like, I think I'm just like selfish in the sense, like, I don't want to share her, you know, like our nanny is a family friend of ours and she's fantastic. But yeah, there's times I'm just like, I just want to like, I want to do everything all the time. Whether that's, I want to work. I want to be with AEW. I want to be on TV doing these things. I want to do the podcast. I want to have these interviews. I want to be the best mom in the world. I want to do all of the things, and trying to like create space for all of those things and to do them all well. That's the big question mark.
You know how difficult it is for people to picture Jon Moxley as a dad?
I know. I think a lot of people have a hard time picturing Jon doing anything aside from wrestling. Blows people's mind. It's like watching like a dog walk on their hind legs. It freaks people out. Very funny.
Is Jon the husband and the father that much different than the Jon we see on TV and in the wrestling ring?
I would say so. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
He's not bleeding at home all the time.
No, he spares us that though, you know, every now and then. He has done a doozy on my my pillowcases though. I will say that the bedding takes a toll. Everything else is pretty good.
This
though.
is the scabs. Is that what that is?
Yeah. Or like, yeah, like the scabs are things that haven't healed or, yeah, I mean, I guess that's really what it is, especially like you leave like a hotel room and he's been like battered and bloodied the night before. And then you're sleeping a certain way. And then your face is dried to the pillow. You got to like pull it off. And then we're back to the beginning.
Yeah. Did you know what you were getting into when you started dating a wrestler?
No.
And then you marry a wrestler? And I'm sure it's even changed a lot since then.
It's really funny because I think of like, so when Jon and I first started dating, and I feel like Jon and I, like, even when we first started dating, it was just kind of like, oh, I'm with this person now, and this is my person, and we're just going to be together. Like, there was never really any kind of conversation of like what we are and what our relationship is and what our dynamic is, any of that. It just sort of like it always has been since we've been together. But anyway, so I'm on the road with WWE at the time, of course, and my mom doesn't know what kind of life I'm really living. Of course, I'm calling and checking in with her, but she doesn't really know anything about pro wrestling. She really doesn't know anything about who Jon Moxley or at the time Dean Ambrose was. So when I'm telling her that I'm dating this guy and she starts looking him up, then she stumbles upon Jon Moxley, looking up his old promos, his old matches. And I remember her like, she called me or she texted me and she was like, so like wary of him. She's like, I don't know about this. Like, he seems like really like, seems a little scary and mean and rattling off all these other adjectives. And I was like, Mom, it's fine. Like, don't sweat it. But now it's so funny because my mom is like so obsessed with Jon. Like my mom loves Jon more than she loves me. I can almost guarantee you that. My mom got a Mox tattoo.
What?
Yes. Yeah, I did not see that in my bingo cards.
Where is this?
It's on her wrist. So we have been kind of like joking around about it. So right after I had Nora, Jon really wanted to go get another tattoo. My mom was staying with us to kind of help me like get my footing as a mom.
Sure.
So my mom's with us in Vegas. Jon wants to go get a new tattoo. And I'm like, well, shit, I want to go get a tattoo too. And this was like, yeah, maybe a couple weeks after I had Nora. So I'm like, I'm gonna get like a tattoo for the baby. And
Yeah.
what did he get? I don't, maybe this is when he got the rose thorn one. I think it was that. But anyway, so my mom's there. My mom gets like big time FOMO. So she's like, well, I want a tattoo too. So she is like, well, what am I going to get? What am I going to get? And she's like trying to figure it out. And Jon jokingly was like, well, why don't you get my name or something like that? And she was like, okay, that's great. My mom's very much so like a call my bluff kind of person.
Wow.
So yeah, she got it. She was like looking it up and like he just wrote his name and then she got that. It's really tiny. It's actually kind of cute, but yeah.
But you
hilarious.
don't even have a Mox tattoo.
No. I got to protect this vessel that is my body.
Yes.
It's done enough damage to this body.
Wow. Well, not nearly as
I
much
know.
damage as your husband.
That's true. That is true. I mean, my baby might beg to differ, but it's fine. Everything's fine. Everything's where it needs to be. It's fine.
I'm at the stage right now where you were 2 years ago when we did the conversation last, because I'm about to have a kid.
That's right. Congratulations.
Yeah.
Do you know what you're having?
We're having a girl.
Yay.
So
Do you have a
our
name
girls
and
can play
everything all
together.
picked out?
I think so.
Or
Yeah.
you're keeping it under wraps until she's here.
Yeah. I think
Cool.
and you know all about that. Like if you tell someone the name now,
It's
and
a
they
really
go,
weird
really?
thing.
That's the name you're thinking?
I know, it's really weird. So I was actually pretty open about that we were naming her Nora. We put it out there kind of early. I don't know why. I think I said it maybe when I did the twins podcast with Nicole and Bree. And anyways, I was trying not to be so superstitious about all of those things. But it is weird. I mean, when you share that name and you put it out there, because then even as it got closer to Nora being born, I was like, are we calling her that? We are calling her that, right? Like I started to almost second guess myself.
That's
where
I'm at right now.
It's
like almost every
you
day,
are?
I'm like, that's the name we're going with, right? She's like, yes, I love that name. I'm like, I love it too. Just making sure.
Did you have like a top 5 that you were kind of like circling around, or
We
top
had
2,
like
3?
3 names and we weren't sold on any of them. And then one day my wife, Rachel, wakes up and goes, what about this name? And I go, wow, that is such a good name. Why was that never part of the conversation? Yes, that's it. Right to the top of the list.
Oh, that's great. See, that's her name then. You guys
That's her name.
know. That's how
Yeah.
we were with Nora. So we got Nora. My grandmother was Eleanor, and I wanted to pay homage to her. So we did
Yeah.
Nora from that. But I was also like, I just like was also listening to a lot of Nora Jones at the time. Like I was just in a bit of a Nora swing. We leaned into it.
I just didn't want to I didn't want the opinions of other people. I didn't
Yeah.
want family members and friends to go, oh, real? That's the name? Huh.
I know.
Wow. Because when there's an actual person attached to that name, you can't say, really, that's going to be the name.
I know it's weird, especially like as you're rattling off different names, you're like have names associated with so many other people, whether it's like it could be a name that I loved and John's like, well, no, I knew a blah 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 and she was a
Yeah,
bitch.
there's a lot of that.
So like you never know. It's really hard to kind of land on that. It's fun though. Like I think naming a person is really cool. It's a
Yeah.
really fun experience. Pretty neat.
How is life in Ohio for you?
Great. It's great here.
I was in Cincinnati for like 9 months. Now I'm in Los Angeles, but
yeah.
There's something so special about the Midwest.
I agree. There's a certain charm about it. And I'm sure you can kind of attest to this too, where like it's almost Canadian adjacent to a degree. Like there's something that feels like home to me.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's just also like the landscape here. Like it's a little bit warmer here than it is in Toronto. But there's something with like the landscape. We're really close to the city. So that's something that we're both very into. Like when I was in Vegas, I hated that there was nowhere to walk to. There's nowhere to just like meander around. You're either going somewhere, you're going to the Strip, you're going to this place. Like there's a destination. I like to just kind of cruise. I want to grab a coffee and like walk around and check some stuff out. But now having a kid too, it's like you don't realize how important having a good park is and having museums and like just a zoo, the good zoo, like all that stuff to do with a kid, and also having family all here is huge.
Also,
So
when you're in Las Vegas and you go outside in the summer, you're going to melt into the sidewalk.
I just couldn't figure it out. Like I could not do it. I figured like I was there for 6 years. For like 5 of those years I was on the road the whole time. So you're home for a couple days and you kind of check in, it's fine, then you're gone again. But once I left WWE, pandemic hit and I'm pregnant, I was like, oh, like the heat is so bad because I had Nora in June. I couldn't take her outside to take her even just for a walk to get some fresh air until like 10 p.m. at night, which is absurd. You couldn't take them out in the day.
Yeah, it's like
How do you take
120.
how do you take a kid to like a park in that weather without them melting into the slide? It's crazy. I just can't do it. So I was so happy. Like, I feel like I'd been barking up that tree for a while to John, where I was like, I'm ready to get out of Vegas. I don't want to be here anymore. I just never really loved it. No offense, Vegas. We had our thing, but we've moved on. But we just didn't know where we were going to land. Had no idea. And John would always kind of joke like, oh, we'll go back to Cincinnati. But he never really big up Cincinnati to me that much. And then once we were actually like really spending a bit more time here, I'm like, it's actually pretty great. Like it really is a cute little town. Like I think it's a bit of an unsung hero of the Midwest. So anyways, long story short, I do quite enjoy it here. It's really nice.
I was just on the other side of the river in Northern Kentucky, and it was amazing how much land and space you could have there.
I know. It's beautiful. Like getting into like Covington and Newport and like all those little like nooks, Alexandria, I guess. Like there's so many cute little spots that are out there. It's so funny. As I say that, John would always be cute little spots. I always want a cute little spot. That was like my thing. Now I'm like, yeah, there's tons of them here. It's awesome. I love it.
Is this where you think you'll live for a long time?
I think so. In terms of like, we also kind of hit the jackpot with our house. Like I really love our house. So we bought a really old house. I mean, a lot of the stuff here is really old, which is a thing that I love. I love that older architecture. I love homes with stories. I love neighborhoods with stories. I mean, the neighborhood here is a little sketch. The story anyways used to be a little sketch around here. Yeah, the house is awesome. So it was built in like 1865. It used to be a bed and breakfast. So the layout of it's really cool, but we also lucked out that we're like in the city, but we also have a yard. So we have a little bit of both. So I think it would be really, really hard for me to want to give this up.
So as you've made this transition into like, I mean, like again, so much has changed, right? You're living in the Midwest now, you're a mom, you're working with AEW. Who's helped the most with your transition into being a mom and parenthood?
Gosh, like it's a hard question to answer because I think everything I do, like even like work wise, if it's like broadcasting, trying to like fine tune things, I really kind of learn from my own mistakes. I kind of learn as I'm going. And as much as, yes, I mean, I FaceTime my own mom all the time. And I really kind of harken back more. So not so much of her giving me advice now. I kind of go to like being a kid again. I think of how my mom was with me. I think of the kind of mom that she was. And my mom was like a very like busy person in the sense that like she liked us to do things. We went camping, we went on little trips. We were like always out doing shit. And that's something that I kind of think about a lot with Nora, that like I want to be that mom that is doing things with her. I want to be like very present and with her. And when I'm with her, I want to be with her. Even just in terms of like making her feel a certain way. I mean, there's like that quote of like people, people might not remember blah, blah, blah about you, but people remember how you made them feel. And that's something I try to think of a lot. And yeah, it's not so much of anybody kind of tapping me on the shoulder and reminding me of that now. I think just when you have a kid, it really takes you back to your own childhood a lot. You think about the things that you saw, the things you did, what worked, what didn't work. And I think you kind of sift through those things more than anything. So yeah, I think I've been doing like a little bit more of like a deep dive on my childhood, but also that sense of being appreciative for what my mom did. Like I know my mom was a good mom, but now being a mom and thinking of like, I have so many more resources than my mom did.
Yeah.
And that's something that I'm like, God, how did even just like, God, the first time your kid gets sick and you're like Googling things and just being able to have that access is crazy. Our parents didn't have that. So yeah, it's really those kind of things I think that have really helped me as a mom, while also just like, I'm really not that hard on myself as a parent in sense of like, again, my mom, I remember her we were, some kind of mom, daughter, kid fight where I'm like upset with her about something. And I remember her saying to me, she's like, I've never been a parent before. I'm figuring it out too. And I was like, probably a teenager at the time, but that really stuck with me that I was like, oh yeah, that's true. Of course. So that's something I kind of think about a lot, is like, we're figuring it out. And so long as I'm always there for her and I'm nice to her, but I'm teaching her lessons and trying to just like educate her, but keep things fun. Like that's really kind of my main objective right now.
Which one of your wrestler friends have you like bounced some mom advice off of?
Oh, probably Becky the most. Becky is like, I mean, she has been the best from like day one, even like when I first found out I was pregnant. I mean, just in terms of even just like, she sent like cute little Doc Martens for Nora and like some cute little outfits and stuff. But she's somebody, anytime like her and Seth are in town, we'll get the girls together and get to like see our babies together. It's such a trip to like see that with our friends, to be like, man, we've spent so much time together now, to see like this next generation of these like little babies that we've made, to see them together is so cool. Rue's about, I think, just about 6 months older than Nora. But yeah, it's really cool to be able to see them together. But yeah, definitely Becky. Of course, Brandy and I were pregnant at the same time, Brandy Rhodes and I, and she had her daughter, I think it was like only 5 days after Nora was born.
Wow.
So in terms of pregnancy wise, we've been able to kind of check in on each other, and with our kids being the same age, kind of checking in on certain things. But yeah, those are the two that come to mind. Am I leaving somebody out? I feel like I'm leaving somebody out. I'm probably leaving somebody out.
I don't know. You do a
There's
lot of stuff
though.
You do a lot of stuff with the Bellas or the Garcias now.
The Garcias, yeah. I mean, even with them, and I just recently was the first time that we were able to get all of our kids together. But it's like anything, we're all so busy to be able to really have time to like stop and check in on each other when it's like, oh, we all have a million things going on. And it is really cool when that moment happens. Like, I had not met Buddy at all, and the last time I saw Birdie, she was tiny. So to now see her as like a little girl, she's, I think, about to turn 6, I want to say. And then seeing seeing Buddy, seeing Mateo, and seeing them all together, it was like so crazy. But it was, it was a quick little visit, but it's so cool just to see your friends at this next stage in life. And it's so cool that we're all going through it like around the same time. It's pretty unique.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, so it's cool.
What did this transition look like? Because you were obviously spending a bunch of time backstage at AEW. You were there for some episodes or some pay-per-views with Jon. What did the conversation start to look like of like, hey, do you want to like be paid to be here too?
Well, it was more so for myself. As much as I love doing my podcast, I love being able to do these long form interviews. I feel like there's just something really fun about that you really don't get to do TV wise, unless you get one of those sweet Netflix deals like Letterman, and
right.
Let's get that going. But I love doing that. But for me, it's like also being able to work from home as a new mom was like a blessing and a curse. I sort of needed to get out of the house. I needed to get back to being me. And as much as like, it was awesome to be able to sit in my sweats and do my work and do all those things. TV has always been my number one love in terms of like career aspect things. So when I started to really get that itch and feeling like I was really in like a good, comfortable spot, that I was like, well, Nora's, a year and a half at the time now. I'm feeling good about maybe stepping back into that world. And I had been having sort of like preliminary conversations with WWE about me maybe going back there and just maybe doing like pay-per-views or some specials. We really didn't hash it out or get that far in those conversations, but some conversations were starting to happen. And then it really kind of dawned on both me and Jon that we're like, man, if this is where it's going to go and this is what we're going to do, of course it makes more sense for me to be in AEW, and just to kind of see all the things that AEW had to offer, as like not only being on the road with my husband, but to be a part of this like young upstart fun, really kind of changing up the whole scene of pro wrestling. That was something that I really want to be a part of. And not only be a part of it as a broadcaster and kind of lend my experience in that world, but also as a producer to a degree. I mean, if I can help with stuff like different backstage promos, help with, all that stuff, all the things that kind of fall under that umbrella, that's something that really, really appealed to me. So yeah, the more those conversations kind of started to happen, and those conversations were really just between Jon and I, then it was just like, okay, let's see what Tony thinks. And yeah, and Tony, of course, was on board. And I feel like, I mean, that's the quickest I've ever really had a contract just come through and be like, okay, come, let's do it. Let's start it and let's get this ball rolling. So it was cool. And of course, it made sense for me to be able to make my debut in Toronto. And that just made it that much more special. It was really, really a fun time.
Are there any similarities between working there and working in WWE?
Yeah, of course. I mean, in terms of like wrestling's wrestling, day of show is always a little bit crazy of like, what's happening? Are things changing? Is this what's happening? Like that happens in both places for sure. But yeah, it's like that fun energy. It's a different energy. And that's something that took me like a little bit of a second to adjust to. I'm so used to, I was at WWE for 8 years. So to now be in a similar environment to that, but it's not the exact same environment as that. It's cool to kind of like figure that out and figure out the ropes. And it's fun doing like the backstage promos there. It's cool. I think WWE having their writers and having written promos for, a majority of the people, that definitely serves a purpose, and there is a benefit to that. But it's fun being able to hop on the set and go, what are we saying? What are we doing? What do we need to try to accomplish here? How do we do that? What are like just trying to like connect the dots to make the most sense of those promos. It's a fun challenge. I like it.
Yeah. I feel like at AEW, you're getting more of like a direction of like, all right, this is where the promo needs to head.
Yes,
whereas in WWE, they're saying, all right, here's your promo.
Exactly. So yeah, it's cool to be able to have that input and to try to make sense of it. It's like anything where you've got, 2 hours of TV time for Dynamite, an hour for Rampage, trying to get the proper storytelling in place for each show to make the most sense with usually it's like a pretty small amount of time. It's not like we're given if you're given 2 minutes for a promo, that's a lot of time.
Yeah.
So when you have 60 seconds to try to accomplish, okay, this match is coming up, this championship is involved, there's also might be some other thing that we want to maybe loosely tie that into this promo. It's really fun trying to figure out how to make it make sense.
I'm always so impressed at no matter what company we're talking about, how anyone can snap their fingers and cut a 60-second promo.
I know.
Like that.
It's great. I know. I love it. It's such a cool, I'm always in awe of the performers when they do that. And I was thinking this when I just recently did an in-ring promo with Ruby Soho, and it was a really great promo, her talking about the Outsiders and, how they came together, why they have joined this group, all of these things. And I was like, damn, that makes a lot. I'm with you. Yes, that makes perfect sense. And then right after that, for her to go into a match. So it's like, there is just so much happening of like your brain firing on like all different paths. This promo needs to happen. This match is happening right after that. This is the out. This is this. Da, da, da. It's like, that always blows my mind to be able to see the performers like really bring it all together like that. Nobody else can do that.
I thought it was interesting when MJF kind of like tied in like, you and Jon into a promo. And I'm like, oh yeah, like we all know this, but wow.
Yeah. It's cool. There's an art to it. That's for sure.
I want to ask about, I think one of the most memorable promos in WWE that you were part of, and it was on Talking Smack. And that moment between The Miz and Daniel Bryan, what was actually going on there? Like what was happening in your earpiece and what was happening in that whole segment?
I don't really remember much happening in my earpiece during that, except for at the very end. It's funny, Mike Mansouri, when I had him on my podcast, and now he's co-executive producer of AEW, what a huge asset he is for us to have. But he was a producer of the show during that time. And I remember him, while all of this action is happening, he's not saying anything in my ear. I think he kind of knew. He was following Mike. He was following Miz to see what he was going to do, follow that promo, follow what's happening with Bryan. And I remember like while they're in the midst of all this chaos, he's saying to me, take us off the air now. And I'm like, what?
Wow.
The F? Like, what do you mean? Take us off the air right now. Like, we are in the moment right now. But it was like his genius to have it just kind of wrap up as it was, with no real outcome, or like we didn't know where things were going to go after that moment with that promo. So yeah, that's really kind of what I remember of that, and just being in the middle and like being between Bryan and between Miz, and to see Miz cutting this promo on why he wasn't wrestling, why the Intercontinental Championship meant so much to him, and like to see his eyes welling up and these tears happening. I'm like, oh my God, he's crying. He's gonna start crying. Oh my God, this is happening. And then he starts digging into Bryan, who, like, I've got so much sympathy for this man that has had to retire from his in-ring career. We don't know what this means. Where's things going to go for him? The injuries, rattling off all these things, that I'm like, do I have to fight the Miz right now? Like, holy shit, this is crazy. But yeah,
You kind of started to step in there and you were like, hey, wait a second. Like, this isn't about that.
I know, because I was like I knew that Bryan was like kind of between a rock and a hard place, physically at least, of like what he was going to be able to do, that I was like, oh my God.
And
that time, go
what
ahead.
Miz was saying was like, there was a lot of truth to what Miz was saying.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. 100%. Like, there was just so much, it was like little truth bombs being dropped all over the place. And it was just like really rattling everybody. But to be in the heat of the moment like that, when you're really capturing lightning in a bottle, and I don't think I wasn't looking at it from like the entertainment aspect, so to speak. I was looking at it of like, oh my God, these are two human beings that I care about, and shit's going down.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah, it was crazy.
That might be Mike's best promo ever.
100%. And that really, like, that lit a fire under a lot of people's asses to not only, yes, he's an incredible performer, and I don't think he gets nearly the respect that he deserves. But it also reminded people of essentially kind of the purpose of what Talking Smack was. It's not Raw and it's not SmackDown. Let's make it something else. We're not going to always turn everything into a storyline, because you'll smell that coming a mile away. So when you can plant those little moments, it makes them so special. It was just such a cool moment in time of us doing that show. And it felt like we were just like off to the side, kind of doing our own thing. No one's really paying attention, so we could get away with kind of whatever. But it was after that moment that they're like, we're gonna start bringing in some writers on this show. And now Vince is like, producing the show. So yeah, every now and then Vince will pop in my ear. I'm like, oh my God, Vince is here. What's happening? I thought that we were just like doing this as like a little after hours program.
Talking Smack was fantastic. I don't know why they got rid of it.
Well, I mean, they brought it back, but it's not the same thing.
No.
You
should have some version of this for AEW.
I agree. No, I completely agree. I would love to do that. And it's, there's definitely like a little bit of a formula that you've got to kind of figure out. And it's also a really cool spot for performers that don't necessarily get all of that TV time on a Rampage, on a Dynamite. It's really cool, I think, for the wrestlers to understand how to speak as their character. And that was things that we would kind of fall into. We'd have certain people, and when you're used to being handed a script and used to kind of being told, this is your character and blah, 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 it's cool to see people just kind of get to live as that character while they're figuring it out. Of course, there's, so many people that are already very well rounded and well versed in that space.
Yeah.
But there are some greener talent that I think could really benefit from just getting to exist and talk and cut promos and whatnot as their character on television like that. The stakes aren't so high.
Yeah. We talked last time about your role as a commentator on Raw, and it's so interesting to think about. It's kind of been a revolving door of like commentators on Raw. Like, it was you, it was Cole, Adnan Virk, Jimmy, you got Kevin, Vic was there for a little while. Like, why do you think it's changed hands so many times?
I'll tell you exactly why, because they put somebody in to do commentary, and I don't think that and it's not that, I don't know how to frame this the right way. It's not that there's not enough respect put on what commentary means and to be good at commentary. They do understand that. But a lot of times they're like, okay, well, put Renee on. She'll be good. She's good in these other things. Let's put her on commentary. I was not ready to do commentary. I wasn't ready to do Raw commentary specifically. And that happens a lot. Adnan Virk was like great broadcaster, fantastic broadcaster. And I think they're like, well, let's bring in somebody from the outside world, from outside sports that really knows that space.
But he had never done play-by-play.
He had never done it. And it's like, it's really just not setting people up for success. When I think sort of the training program like we had with doing NXT, being in that space, then you get called up, because it's also very different doing a show at NXT versus doing Raw or SmackDown. It's the game completely changes once Vince is in your ear, once you're doing a 3-hour long show. It's such a different dynamic. And you know, I'm sure having Vic on, I'm sure he'd be able to talk about that as well. But I think it's just really putting people in, and it's a sink or swim mentality. And it just sucks because most people end up sinking, and it's not for lack of talent or like not being good at that position. It takes a really long time to become a great wrestling commentator. You can be a sports commentator, and I think probably get better at that because you're really just dealing with calling what you see and talking about facts.
Yeah.
That's not what we do as a wrestling commentator. Now you're telling stories. You're putting over the baby face. You're talking about the heel. You're talking about them in different ways. Sometimes there's just like the different nuanced subtleties of things that are happening. So yeah, wrestling commentary is just so different from being a hockey commentator, a football commentator, whatever it may be. And as much as I think it's interesting to try to, I mean, you know, Pat McAfee is such an anomaly. He's so great at what he does, but he's also a huge wrestling fan. So that of course helps. And he's just a huge personality. But yeah, I think it's really just that. I think it's putting somebody in that's not ready and then not giving them the time to develop to be where they need to be. Michael Cole has been doing commentary for what, like 20 years or something? Like
More,
he's been
since the 90s.
So long. And
he's so good. I feel like
he's so good. I could literally dedicate like an hour of this time to just talking about how good he is at what he does. And I think now he finally does get the credit for everybody.
Finally,
like Michael Cole's pretty great. Like he's so fantastic.
I think his WrestleMania match, I think, made people unfortunately look at him in a different way.
Sure. Yeah. And that's fair. But you know, looking at the career the guy's been able to have, he's so great, and he's got such thick skin. I assure you, it does not rattle him when people want to talk a little shit. But I love that he is now getting the love and the appreciation that he deserves. He's so talented. And he loves what he does, and you can hear that come through. There really is such a passion there for what he does. But yeah, it's not an easy thing to just step in and start doing and hope that you're going to be good. And I'm sure so many of the names that you rattled off could have gotten to be very good, but there's a little bit of a knee-jerk reaction to, oh my God, this person's not good. They don't know what they're doing. F this person, pull them out. Let's bring in Lawler or Booker, our guys that we know the business, and they're gonna be able to kind of plug in there and do it. It's a tough spot to be in for sure.
You're right though, that it's so different in pro wrestling, because if I watch a regional football game, I'm a big Browns fan. So if I watch a regional game on CBS and I don't know who the commentators are, I don't notice or care.
Sure. Yeah,
just watch the game.
Yeah.
But in pro wrestling, you immediately, from the time the fireworks are going off on Raw, you go, wait a second.
Who's that? Imposter.
And I already don't like them. And I think that's the thing in wrestling.
That's a trained thing. I hate this person. Commentators and announcers are these dweebs, and we're not supposed to like them, blah, blah, blah.
And you've got to win me over now.
Totally. Yeah.
And you did such a good job of that. Like, you really endeared yourself to the wrestling audience. And it was like, I feel like, especially when a new face comes in, people go, I'm not so sure about this person.
Yeah.
But you like won everybody over. Like, everybody loves Renee.
Thank you. I love everybody for the most part. No, I got really lucky. In the sense that, like, I think the way that I got brought into wrestling as well, from doing Right After Wrestling, or, whatever version of that show, that Aftermath. I just forgot the name of it there for a second. Right After Wrestling into Aftermath. But to be able to start doing that show and doing an after show, again, the stakes aren't very high. We're having fun. We're broadcasting in Canada. And like, that was a great show to do. But then to have that kind of land me on the radar of WWE, me come into WWE and really learning the business from a different aspect, learning different respect for the business from that aspect. Like, I think that that's something that I've always been like pretty open and talked about. But yeah, I think it's just like, I like wrestling, man. I like it. And even me just being away from it for the 2 years or whatever that I did step away for a bit. You just get that itch once you're in it. It's really is hard to just go, well, I'm done with wrestling now. Like, yeah, fat chance. Good luck with that.
And that's why when I see people like Batista, The Rock, John Cena now to a kind of a lesser degree, like what they have done in Hollywood is so incredibly impressive. But it's also that they've done that by stepping away from wrestling and not, like Batista hasn't done anything in years, like, and not going back into that quicksand as Dave described it to me.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's not easy to do. And I commend the work that they've done from the Cena, from Rock, from Batista. You know, you can name off a bunch of people that have had these really successful careers. But I also will say, I think there's a lot of really, really talented people as pro wrestlers, whether they're with WWE or they're with AEW, that I think you can't be a pro wrestler and not have incredible work ethic.
Oh yeah.
And that's something that I think definitely transfers over into Hollywood. You're not going to be late. You're not going to miss your shoot. You're not going to be shitty to people. You're not going to be rude to people, because that just doesn't fly in our world. There's no way that that's going to happen. But also, like, hey, learn the script really quick. Also, this is your mark and here's this, Like, wrestling is entertainment boot camp. That I do think that there's probably a couple names that you could throw out there that I think would really have great successful careers in Hollywood, should they. And I do think Hollywood's being a lot more open-minded to pro wrestling and pro wrestlers. They are, but there's definitely still a little bit of I don't know, that's that wrestler, right? There is still a little bit of that. And I think until that stigma's gone, but it's not for a lack of talent on our end, I'll say.
Do you think MJF's one of those people that could cross over?
Yeah, definitely. Of course.
I feel like everything he says is so believable.
He's really hard to bet against. He's a great promo. He's a great promo. He's a great storyteller. He's definitely one of them. But I think, you look at somebody like a Ricky Starks. I think he's somebody who's really got that charisma and that charm too. And there's just something interesting about him. And I think there's a lot to him that has not been discovered yet, character-wise, on camera, all of that. And I think that makes him a very exciting. He's like there's just like a really cool charisma with him that I like. So he's somebody that I would definitely like to see do some more stuff too.
Do you have a favorite Jon Moxley match?
Ooh, gosh. What is my favorite Jon Moxley match? That's a good question. It's hard to say. God, he wrestles all the time.
Yeah, he has a lot of great matches.
If he was somebody that like wrestled like, once a month, something like that, I might be able to whittle it down a little bit more. But now I'm like, oh my gosh, to think of like all of these matches that he's had. Let me think for a second. I gotta like mull some over. It's funny because the first, I think I really loved the moment. It's probably an easy answer, but like just even when he debuted.
Yeah.
When he debuted with AEW was like, oh my God, that energy. I get like goosebumps thinking about it because I wasn't with him at the building. I did not get to go to, I think he was at MGM Grand at the time. I didn't get to go. I was still working with WWE, of course. So I was like, I'm going to stay here. I'm not going to like ruffle any feathers or make anything weird. So I'm going to stay here and watch you. And knowing that it was happening, it was really kept under wraps. And to see him show up, come out from the crowd as he does, but to just see him as Jon Moxley for the first time, essentially, was that will always, like, that's just such a proud wife moment of seeing somebody bet on themselves and knowing I have so much more to offer than what I've been given, and I'm going out and I'm going to fucking get it. And that's exactly what he did. And to see the crowd be like, oh my God, to watch, Lita was with me. She was at my house and we were watching together. She happened to be in Vegas for it. And I was like, we've got to watch AEW. And she's like, wait, why? I was like, because it's happening right now. So yeah, we got to watch that together. But yeah, just to see the crowd reaction, to see that moment with Jericho, for him to drop Kenny on top of the poker chips, like, and that was just him like really entering the fray of all things AEW. I mean, that's definitely one that stands out for me.
I
That's
was
more of
there.
like a moment. Were you there for that?
I was there, and it was so cool seeing the crowd immediately know this was Jon Moxley. This wasn't Dean Ambrose. This was Jon Moxley. That was so cool to see.
Wasn't that neat? And I think there's always probably like that little bit of reservation of like, you know, I hope that they're going to know that it's Jon Moxley and not Dean Ambrose.
Yeah.
And to see that switch happen, and to kind of see him be like reborn as his former self again was like such a cool moment.
So we don't have a favorite Jon Moxley match.
I mean, I would say that's my favorite moment.
Jon Moxley moment. Yeah. That's your favorite Jon Moxley moment. That's great.
No, for a match. It's funny because when you said that, I guess maybe because I just had Kenny on my podcast, their match
was great, by the way.
It was thank you. That was a really fun conversation. If
a
it
great
wasn't
session, if you will.
A great session. If it wasn't for the lack of pyrotechnics at the end of that match, I really, really did love that match. Jon and Bryan was really great at Arthur Ashe, but like obviously that was really great. Duh.
I feel like Bryan with anybody is pretty spectacular.
I know. It's really great. I mean, I can't really think of like an opponent that Jon's not had, because I also feel like in the last however many years, he's kind of been more or less like hand picking what his matches were going to be and who his opponents were going to be. So to think of like what some of those dream matches could be for him. I mean, yeah, whether it's Kenny, whether it's Bryan, whether it's, having his match with MJF, even though he lost the title. I don't know. Yeah, for me, it's I'm more so into knowing like what those moments are. Like even like when Regal came out with him and Bryan, when they're in the ring and they're slapping each other, and to have like Regal show up. That was one that also gave me goosebumps again, to like harken back to like both of their separate relationships with Regal. That was a really cool special moment. So anyways, I can't really say that what my favorite Jon Moxley match is. I don't know. Do you have one?
I mean, I would have to go with favorite moment being that debut. So good. Yeah.
Right.
The fact that I was there for that, but the cool
there's so
thing
many
is,
matches. There's so many. It's really hard for me to say.
And Jon's always in the conversation now as one of the best wrestlers in the world every year.
And, for sure he is. And I mean, I got to give a little bit of love to Hangman here too, because I do feel like the two of them have such incredible chemistry in the ring together. And the 4 matches that they've had, that series, like I think that they've done some really incredible storytelling. Like obviously their matches have been so hard hitting and they beat the absolute piss out of each other. But the storytelling that they've been able to do without any championships involved, I think that they've done such a great job to string us along for 4 different matches. Like it's pretty impressive. I will say, watching their Texas death match at Revolution, it started to make my stomach turn a little bit. I'm watching it and I'm like watching it in talent viewing and I'm like, oh my God. Like when Jon is stabbing Hangman in the forehead with the fork and it starts like spewing everywhere, like all over Jon. I'm like, because all I'm thinking during this, I'm like, there's got to be a receipt for this somewhere. It's coming back for you 100%. So I'm kind of holding my breath until the very end of the match. They're crazy.
How long can he keep doing this, do you think?
Oh God, I don't know. I'm really not sure. I mean, maybe start pacing them out a little more. That might help.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know.
We
need to, I'm really like, I want him to buy a hyperbaric chamber. We're in the middle of putting a gym in our basement.
Oh, so. I was in DDP's hyperbaric chamber. It's fantastic.
DDP is all about it. Him and I have spoken about it. And he actually put me in contact with a friend of his that's in the hyperbaric chamber business. So yeah, I really want Jon to get on that, but he's building a gym in our basement right now. So I think any of the wellness, stretching, any of the things you can kind of do to help take care of yourself.
Get him a
as
cold
much as
plunge, a
possible.
sauna,
Yeah,
a
the
hyperbaric
works.
chamber.
Give them the works.
Some
Make it a whole squat.
DDPY.
Yes, get all of it. Yeah, that's sort of like my wife pitch to him. I'm like, all right, let's just stretch it out. Let's get a little cold compress on there. Shut it down a little bit. Drink some water. Drink a lot of water.
I want to talk a little Canadian stuff with you here.
Okay, great.
Who do you think is the best Canadian band of all time?
Oh, geez. Best Canadian band of all time.
I know it's so difficult.
It is really difficult. I mean, you probably have to say the Tragically Hip, right?
I think you'd have to. And then,
that
final performance, even just thinking about it, like, gives me goosebumps.
Yeah.
It makes me want to cry.
Totally. I mean, yeah, I would have to say probably the Hip when we're talking bands. And then if you want to get into like the solo artist category, that's a different conversation.
Ooh, who's that?
Well, that I think opens it up a lot more, because I think when you're
Sure.
talking full bands, like the ones that come to mind, of course, Tragically Hip. I like Blue Rodeo a lot. Blue
Okay,
Rodeo
yeah. I
is
mean, a
really
lot of people go with
great.
Nickelback, Bare Naked Ladies.
I don't like either of those bands. People throw in Rush. I'm actually not a huge Rush fan.
Wow.
I know. So that kind of clears the path a little bit for me when it comes to like the greatest band of all time.
Sum 41.
Throw them out there. I mean,
They're
come
from
on.
Ajax.
They've got some bangers, dude.
They do.
They've got some good songs. But when it comes to solo artists, it's like Shania Twain, Bryan Adams,
Celine
Justin
Dion.
Bieber, Celine Dion, Avril Lavigne, Alanis Morissette.
Yes.
Like there's so many great names that you could rattle off. Canadians are pretty great.
They're pretty great.
Dare I say so?
No, and we always play this game as Canadians. When a Canadian starts to do something in Hollywood, or you see them at the Oscars or the Grammys, you go, one of us.
There he is. Yeah.
Ryan Reynolds, by the way, is from Canada, and so am I.
We love to plug it. We love it, love it, love it.
What was the decision for you to become an American citizen?
I really just wanted to not deal with paperwork anymore.
Like renewing your green card?
Oh my God, the visa, the green card, blah, 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 blah. It's a lot of paperwork to keep track of. I didn't want to have the paperwork anymore. I've got all the little cards, all that stuff. And then so you can apply to become a citizen after you've either had your green card for 5 years or you've been married to an American for 3. So being married to an American for I think I got my green card maybe just before Jon and I got married, I think. So once it was it was just before our 3-year wedding anniversary that I was like, I'm doing it. I'm going to start applying because I know it takes about a year to do. And then now having my daughter, I was like, well, I'm going to have an American baby.
Is she not going to be a dual citizen?
She will be. I've just not done the paperwork yet.
Well, you've got 16 more years to figure that out.
I know, but I am going to do it sooner than later.
Yeah, we are too.
Because you've already got the paperwork out anyways, because I had just done all of my stuff. So I do want to actually do hers pretty soon. So I actually just got my American passport a couple weeks ago. So
you're like Jason Bourne with the 2 passports.
Dude, it's a trip.
Wow.
A trip. Yeah, traveling with 2 passports makes you feel like dangerous and cool.
Yeah.
I was messaging so many people. I'm like, how do I do this? What do I do? I'm like messaging like Christian. I'm like, you're a dual citizen. What do you do? Yeah, it's very, very cool. So yeah, I really just wanted to get it done. I was done with the paperwork. I've been here. I've been living in the United States for 11 years. 11 years now. I've been in the United States. So yeah, it was time.
I just renewed my green card and I was on the fence about like, which one do I want to do?
So why did you not? What was your reservation?
Not a reservation. There's just really no advantage to, Canadian citizenship it's a great passport to travel on.
Yeah.
There's really no advantage to becoming an American citizen for me. The only thing that I would be different is I could vote and I wouldn't be deported if I was convicted of a felony. So I don't ever have to do jury duty.
That's actually a good one. The second
Pretty good, right?
For that, I'm going to be cursing it. Yeah,
and I think that
true.
One of my friends who's Canadian, he's lived here for like 25 years. He basically said, like, if you do ever choose to live somewhere else one day and you're an American citizen, you will always have to pay taxes in America.
Oh, that's a good point.
And I went, well, I don't know, probably won't ever leave, but who knows?
Yeah.
And I said, but that's a really good thing to have in my back pocket for
Yeah.
40 years from now or something.
Sure. You never know. You might want to pull a Shania and go to Switzerland. You never know.
Ooh, and he was talking about, like, I think I'm going to move to Bahamas eventually. And I'm like, well, I see what you're talking about here.
Yeah. Gosh.
So I don't know. I just
that.
filled out a form, paid my whatever it was, $480, and got a new green card.
Oh, well, there you go. You're good then. You're good for another decade. You're fine.
Yeah. We'll talk about it in 2032.
Yikes.
Jeez.
Yikes.
All right, as we wrap this up, I want to end with gratitude because that's such an important part of my life. I don't think we did this last time.
I think we did.
Oh, okay. I wonder if it'll be the same 3 things then.
Oh God, I don't remember my 3 things first. So we'll see.
I do this every morning, and before I go to bed, I say out loud 3 things I'm grateful for, and it just kind of sets the tone for the day. So, what are 3 things in your life that you're grateful for right now?
My baby, my husband, and stability.
So good. So good to catch up with you too. Thank you for making the time.
Yeah, thank you. Really good to see you. How long until your baby's born?
2 months tomorrow.
Oh, okay. Listen,
Yeah.
get your dad shoes ready. It's time to kick into high gear.
I don't know I don't know anything about this.
Neither did I. You figure it out. I didn't know shit about shit. And now I feel like I'm firing in all cylinders. You'll be all right.
We've got a whole room over here full of baby stuff.
Oh, yeah. And a bunch of shit that you don't need. 100%. I did it.
I'm sure.
Oh, yeah. So much stuff that I'm like, why did I buy this? Oh, my God.
I might be hitting you up and be like, hey, what am I supposed to do here?
Please do. I love it. I love doling out parent advice.
Well, congrats on everything.
Thank you.
And we didn't even talk about, like, you're also, real quick, tell us all the jobs you have right now.
Oh my gosh. Well, right now, I am a on-air personality broadcaster for All Elite Wrestling. You can catch me on Dynamite on Wednesdays.
I've heard of it.
Rampage. Yeah, we're booked and busy doing all those things. I also host a podcast for the Volume Podcast Network called The Sessions with me, Renee Paquette. I drop new episodes on Tuesdays and Thursdays, anywhere that you listen to podcasts. And then just some fun side stuff. We actually just started doing a new thing that's going to drop coming very soon called the Sneaker Sessions, where we're getting shoes and we're doing interviews and we're doing a little walk and talk kind of hang. And then I've got some fun cooking content coming out as well. So I'm just staying busy.
You've also got some stuff with the Bengals too.
And the Bengals. I've got my podcast with the Bengals called Renee All Day. So hopefully once the season kicks back up, I will be back in there.
Have you done anything with Joe Burrow yet?
No, he is like the holy grail. He's hard to get to. So hopefully if they bring me back again this coming season, that maybe they'll throw Burrow my way.
Nice.
I would love to hang out with Burrow.
He seems like such a cool person to spend some time with.
But I feel like a tough interview.
Ooh, that's a good point.
Don't you think? He's a bit of a tough nut to crack. So
I lived in Cleveland for 5 years, and I was there when LeBron was there, and he was the holy grail, right? He was like, they had a whole economy based on LeBron James playing basketball there.
Yeah.
Nobody got an interview with LeBron James.
No. Though I will say Colin Cowherd with the Volume, he had Burrow on once a week. He somehow figured that out. I guess Burrow was a fan of Colin's, of course, and they figured something out where Burrow would join Colin once a week and kind of catch up in between games and whatnot. So maybe Uncle Colin can help me out with that a little bit too. We'll see.
There it is. Well, Renee, so good to see you, and thank you so much for hanging out here.
Of course. Yeah. Good luck with the baby. You guys are going to crush it. Thanks for having me on, and hopefully I'll see you soon.